Welcome in, everybody. It is Tuesday, November 5th, and Indiana is still unbeaten. That is something we thought we'd never say. It is early November, and Indiana still has not lost a game. What a crazy, just a crazy chain of events this season has been. But we're here to break it all down. Peegs.com's Matt Weaver, Jared Kelly here, talking through Indiana's 47 to 10 win over Michigan State, and then what lies ahead with Michigan coming into town this week. Matt, you were in East Lansing. This was a game where Cignetti tweeted out after. A lot of people didn't know how we were going to respond after, trailing in a game. Well, we saw it. Indiana goes down 10-0 early, scores 47 unanswered. And quite honestly, that fourth quarter, it felt like a drubbing. Like you kind of felt bad for Michigan State in the fourth quarter, just how much Indiana was pouring it on there late.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I didn't feel as bad because I've been on the other end of those for as a fan and then covering this team for a number of years. But yeah, I mean, honestly, early on, I thought, okay, is this the game where they kind of it just it doesn't go right for them. They have they go they just had they lose they fall they finally get a something in the loss column, but just it's almost like they flipped a switch. They were just seemed a little bit flat. I don't know if you can kind of see on TV. They just seemed a little bit flat. That drop by Miles Cross I think was a little bit deflating. I know it was real early, but it wasn't a great ball by Rourke, but it should have been caught. And on that third down play, but then they just like they've done all year. It took a little bit longer, maybe than usual, but they kicked it into high gear, and then from then on out, and as good as the offense was, I mean, 15 tackles for loss. Like it's really hard to wrap your head around that number. That's like I was saying in the press box, that's like 3 games worth of tackles for loss. I mean, if you get 5 tackles for loss in a game, that's pretty good. They got 15. I think they had 7 sacks. McCall Kamara again. I mean, it's just we're a broken record anymore. The guy's just a beast. Um, Amari Farrell continues to have a really impressive season. I think a little bit quietly because there's been some other guys. Pons has been defensive player, but Farrell's been really good this year, and he's moved positions. And up front, it wasn't just him. Everybody played great. Kamara mentioned after the game. So then offensively, didn't run the ball, I guess, probably as well as they normally have. But I mean, doesn't matter when you can throw it like that. And then special teams, which has not gotten enough credit this year. And I forgot this. They had 2 blocks. Now the second one was more of a tip, but it counts as a block. And it was because I did the freshman tracker. Daniel Ndukwe, it's his second block punt of the season. I didn't realize that he got that block punt there at Michigan State. Obviously, Pons, everybody saw that, but it's just that this team is they're just a machine. I don't know how else to say it. I just did a podcast with the Michigan guy, and he's like asking how do you explain this? I'm like, I can't. You can't explain it. It's just they're well coached. They've got players who are bought in and gelled really well together. They're playing with the chip on their shoulder. The focus is amazing. The attention to detail, the fact that they don't get caught up in a good player or bad player, a good quarter or bad quarter, they just keep playing. You just don't really see this a lot at the college level. Guys who are playing almost like pros. You know what I mean? It's like workman like, but they're having fun. So yeah, it was a great game, great performance. A lot of IU fans. And by the end of the game, it was probably more IU fans than Michigan State fans because that place cleared out pretty quick when they in the third quarter there. So, I used to live up there as a kid. I saw some bad IU losses. Saw win a few games. So it was kind of fun to see him go up there and kind of beat the tar out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, you heard the overrated chants from the Michigan State student section there in the first quarter when Indiana went down early, and then obviously those guys were cleared out by the fourth quarter. So it was quite the turn of events there in East Lansing, and quite honestly, when they went down 10-0, I was a little bit concerned because Curtis Rourke didn't look great in his first 2 drives. Indiana was dropping balls that they don't normally drop. Indiana's defense looked a lot more vulnerable than we've seen them in the past. And then, like you said, something kind of a switch flipped. And it really feels like with this team, it is impossible to keep them down for more than a quarter. Yeah, I mean, we haven't seen them, be limited for more than a quarter this season. And it feels like a matter of if, not when, they're gonna kind of figure it out within games. Because at this point, we're 9 games in it. It doesn't feel like any team in the nation is going to solve Indiana completely in a 4-quarter game. And especially in this game, we saw Indiana make a ton of adjustments, which I thought were good. And we'll talk a lot about the defense here in a little bit. But I thought Brian Haynes called a terrific game. Obviously, those first 2 drives, it really felt like Michigan State kind of scripted those 2 drives because a lot of those, aside from those scrambles out of the pocket that Aiden Childs had, a lot of those plays look like they're kind of almost predetermined, like first read, get it out quick type throws. And then once Indiana's defense sort of figured them out, it really felt like Michigan State's offense had no clue what to do. And defensively. You just can't say enough about these guys. And those 2 picks from Amari Farrell, who you just mentioned, those could kind of completely turn the game around. Because if you don't get those 2 picks and Michigan State marches down the field again and gets, another touchdown, you're looking at a 17, 14-point deficit, something like that. It might have been a lot harder for Indiana to come back in this one.
Yeah, and give Michigan State credit. I think they on that one drive they had I want to say it was a third down, and they threw that play down the sideline. Is it Nick Marsh, the
Yeah.
freshman, who looks like he's going to be a heck of a player? He made the catch on the sideline and kept his toe in. First glance from the press box, you thought, well, maybe he's out of bounds. And then he made a great catch for the touchdown where Childs scrambled out. And those were great plays. I think it's hard to count on those plays for 4 quarters. And I think that's kind of what happened. And I think you're right. I think they probably did script some stuff. And then once they got into the game and IU started making adjustments, which we've talked about all year, they're so good on both sides of the ball at adjusting to what the other team's doing. Um, they really, I mean, somebody did the stats. I think it was Todd Golden after the game. It was like 120 something yards in the first quarter. I mean, it was 0 yards in fourth quarter, I think, for Michigan State of total offense. And I know sacks are counted in, but I want to say it was like minus 30 yards rushing or something like that
Yeah.
for the game. I mean, it's just, domination and, doing it without a bunch of household names. I mean, the Michigan guy kind of mentioned that he's like, I'm looking at mock drafts, I don't see any Indiana defensive players, and we've talked about Kamara might be a guy. He's not prototypical size, but he's just so good. But yeah, Carpenter. These guys that nobody really knows about, they're just playing great football. And I joked in the press box, Childs, when he got I mean, that guy still might be in an ice bath because he got the what kicked out of him for, I think, was he in there till the third quarter. And then the
Yeah.
next guy, I thought Kamara murdered him when he sacked him on that one play when he came dead sprint from like 10 yards away. It's just impressive. I mean, just it's hard to put. We say it every week, and we're running out of adjectives and descriptions, but they're incredibly well coached. They're disciplined. And said this also to the Michigan guy. You will never see a guy with the ball in his hands against an Indiana defense under Brian Haynes where there's not 4 or 5, 6 guys right there. They swarm to the ball as good as any team I've ever seen and I've covered, and as almost as any. I mean, they're so good at swarming to the ball. There's almost never just 1 or 2 guys trying, unless it's in a confined space or like you're down at the goal line. But like if it's out in space, they swarm to the ball incredibly well. Everybody does, not just the DBs or whatever. So give them credit. They settled in and they completely. I mean, they punched them in the mouth. Let's be honest. They punched Michigan State in the mouth, and Michigan State did not punch back.
No, no, especially when their back quarterback came in, Tommy Schuster. I mean, he looked like a deer in headlights, and I don't blame him either because that Indiana defense was literally looking to take his head off after Childs went out of the game. And at that point, the game was already over, and Indiana's defense was just, they were looking at they're out for blood there. So I feel bad for him, but then again, I don't. You got to get in there and give yourself a chance. But Michigan State at that point was just completely defeated. Let's talk about Curtis Rourke here, Matt. Coming into the game, we knew he was going to start. Kurt Cignetti announced it the previous Thursday on his radio show that Rourke would be back in action. There were some reports that he might wear a glove, but ultimately he only had just like a little bit of a wrap and some tape on his thumb. The first 2 drives weren't great. You could see him kind of feeling out the game a little bit. The accuracy wasn't there. But as the game kind of went along and you saw him really get into a rhythm and feel a little bit more comfortable with, everything going on with his thumb, he looked like the same old Curtis Rourke. There wasn't any, real issues. And obviously the decision making, that's always going to be, a staple of Curtis Rourke's game. But once the accuracy came along and he, felt more comfortable kind of taking those deep shots, this looked like the same old Indiana offense that we saw pre-injury.
Yeah, it was weird. It looked like he cut. the thumb off of a glove and then somehow kind of taped it on his hand so that, and he mentioned it, and you could see his finger a little bit when he came in for the, because they put him at the table where Cignetti was, and he had his, when he first came in you could see it, and then he kind of put his hand on the table. You could see that, you could see where the nail used to be, and it looked, I mean, I don't, but his finger looked a little bit swollen. And he mentioned that, if you've ever had a swollen finger, you kind of lose the touch and the sense of feel when you grab something. So it makes sense that he would have that on there. It'd be interesting to see if he does anything this week or if the swelling's down enough where he doesn't have to. But yeah, it was his second worst completion percentage game, other than just FIU, which is the first game of the year, 65.5%, which is still pretty good. But the thing is, he's been like 75%, 73 to 75% pretty much all year. He was terrific. And some great throws. And obviously, guys, they did a great job as always getting guys open. Zach Court on that first touchdown, I could have made that throw. I mean, there wasn't anybody within 20 feet of him. The throw to Miles Price, I think, was right after the safety, put him up 30-10 when he kind of went down the sideline. That was open. The throw to Surratt, the last touchdown of the game, was one of the ones we've seen a bunch of where he fits into a small window. He made a great throw on kind of like a slant to Keyshawn Williams where he ran for, quite a few yards. He was just great. I mean, and one thing what I really liked is after they kind of struggled those first two, what you would notice is a lot of kind of those RPOs and throws out to the perimeter. And I think that my guess is just to kind of get them going, not just Rourke, but the entire offense. The entire offense just seemed, like I said, a little flat. And that was just, they were getting like 7-8 yards on those plays. And I think that kind of got them going. And then once they got into that rhythm, then you can start maybe opening up a little bit more. But like I said, early on the run game, Michigan State did a good job. They were doing a good job stopping the run. But Rourke was Rourke again. Just another phenomenal performance. And the receivers were good. So he's been fun to watch, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. The yardage too for Indiana. I know they were held under, what was it? Under 500 yards in this game. No, sorry, 400 yards in this game. It's kind of misleading too because Indiana had really good starting field position for a lot of these drives. Just with the turnover on downs, the block punts, stuff like that. So the yardage is a little bit misleading. They probably could have had a ton more. If they were given normal starting field position, which obviously Indiana's going to take it every time if they can get a better starting field position. But it really felt like, if you just look at the box score and the stats, it doesn't really tell the whole story based on how this game went. And offensively, I like too that Indiana, even when they were up by a ton, they were starting to. You could see they were adding these new kind of play calling wrinkles in there as well. We saw the one end around handoff to Omar Cooper that went for a touchdown. Miles Price had a jet sweep that he stepped out at the 1 yard line with. So all these new little wrinkles, and Indiana, we haven't seen a whole ton of trick plays this year except for those two Tyson Lawton passes that he missed both of them. But you have to feel like 9 games into the season, we haven't really seen a whole lot of trick plays. I feel like Indiana, Mike Shanahan, still has some stuff left in his bag, and I do wonder if that Ohio State game is when we see those kind of things pulled out.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird to say this, with Indiana being a 14-point favorite over a team that's beat them 42 of the last 44 or 43 of the last 45, whatever it is, against Michigan. And I think the line is too low. I really do. I think it's too low. I don't, unless Indiana just has self-inflicted wounds that we haven't seen, a little bit against Maryland, but really they've not hurt themselves all year. I don't think you're going to have to pull them out this week. But yeah, I think that Ohio State game could be a game where if they've got some, tricks up their sleeves, so to speak, that could be the game where you do it. Especially you get in a critical part of the game. Maybe it's tie game or you're just down a little bit or whatever it may be, and a score could be huge for you. Maybe you see something like that. I mean, I really do think this team can line up and play competitively with Ohio State for 4 quarters. It's going to be a tough game, really tough game because they got a ton of talent. But I think they can line up and play with them for 4 quarters. But you may, there is a talent disadvantage, and sometimes those kind of plays can kind of level the playing field. So, yeah, you're right. We haven't seen a lot. We've seen, I think they've run that one with Cooper. They might have run that before with Price once or twice a season, but it hasn't been a staple. It's not been like every week. It's kind of like they throw it in there every once in a while. And maybe it's like, maybe they see something, in the game. They see a tendency from the opposing defense, that Shanahan sees from the press box. But stuff like that, especially when I kind of felt like if they did something like that, because Michigan State was really selling out, they were really diving hard whichever way Indiana was running, and if you can get a team to do that and you can flip the ball to a guy going the other way, and we saw it, Cooper didn't get touched until he got down to like the 5 yard line. Now he wasn't a super far run. I want to say 20 yards maybe
Yeah.
somewhere around there, but yeah, and they've got guys who can make those plays. Price, Williams, Cooper, those are all guys who can make those kind of plays. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, this week I would think you can just play your normal game plan and come away and be successful. But that Ohio State game, it'll be kind of interesting if you do some different stuff.
Yeah. Defensively, I mean, really with the whole team, there's just not a whole lot to nitpick with. But we have seen Indiana kind of have some trouble this year with those bigger receivers. Nick Marsh, I mean, Michigan State, first of all, has to do everything they can to keep that kid around because he's only a freshman. And if he goes portaling, every team in the nation is going to be after him. But he's just, one of several big-bodied wide receivers that have given Indiana a little bit of trouble this year on the outside. And I don't want to look too far ahead, but when you get to that Ohio State game and even this Michigan game where you have those bigger receivers that are more athletic, that is still one area where I'm curious about how Indiana is going to handle it. Because D'Angelo Pons is a stud, and we've seen it, he's proven it. But I still do wonder if Indiana is going to be able to handle that on a consistent basis against those higher level teams. But overall, I really like how the secondaries come together. And then the front seven, like we said, has done an amazing job. So I don't know, Matt, if you've had those same kind of questions still. That's just something I had in my mind.
Yeah, and I mean this week, you're going to see one of the better, and Nebraska had a pretty good tight end. I think it's Fedone.
Yeah.
But Colston Loveland is, I mean, this guy's a first round pick. I mean, he's really, really good. And I could see Michigan trying to target him a lot. Now, the thing with Michigan, and I don't know what they have other than him at tight end. They'll probably have a blocking, but if they're struggling to block, does that kind of take him out of the passing game a little bit? If they have to keep him in to help out to protect the quarterback, because they haven't. Michigan, for all the talent they have on defense, they're kind of middle of the pack in sacks. I mean, I would say middle of the pack, like fifth or sixth. You expect them to be a little bit higher. Same thing with tackles for loss. The Michigan guy, Alejandro, mentioned that their tackles have struggled to protect a little bit this year. They've been kind of spotty there, which obviously with Indiana's edge guys, Carr, and real quick on Linnell Carr, Kamar's got all the pub and deservedly so. Linnell Carr's played really well. He may not have the stats, but he's gotten a lot of pressures and stuff. But yeah, those bigger receivers, especially with Pons, Jameer Johnson's got good size. But yeah, you kind of wonder. I think Pons will be fine, but when you get down inside the 10 yard line, he can be bodied. I mean, he is. He's a smaller guy, and it's going to be a little bit tougher on him. When you get down that area, but so far those guys haven't hurt him.
All right, I did want to, before we move on here, Matt, I did want to talk about special teams a little bit because special teams always deserves a little bit of love, and especially in this game. This is, obviously special teams is always going to be a little bit overlooked for just because they're not on the field a whole ton. Usually don't make a whole lot of game-breaking plays. But this was a game where Indiana really, 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 leaned on its special teams to deliver those big-time plays. The D'Angelo Pons block punt was obviously the big one that went back through the end zone for a safety. Nico Radicic, 9 games. He's already broken the single season extra points record. Just crazy. And, with that record, obviously it's not anything crazy significant, but I think people are taking for granted how easy it is for a guy like that to maybe, kind of take those extra points for granted. You're up so big, it can be easy to lose focus. He hasn't missed a kick all year, Radicic hasn't. And this is a kid who didn't kick barely at all last year. You're getting good returns out of Miles Price still in the punt return game. We haven't seen a whole lot of Solomon Van Horst in the kick return game, but for as much love as we give the offense and the defense, the special teams has been really, really good this year too.
Yeah, they have, and I think the coverage units have been good. I mean, I can't really remember any runs. There might have been maybe one or two this season where you're a little bit nervous, but and here's the other, James Evans, who we joked has not played much this year. 4 punts on Saturday, 47 yards per punt, and he had one where, if you're a golfer, you'd love for your wedge to be able to spin like he spun that ball at the 5 yard line. He's been terrific. He hasn't punted a lot, but he's been as good as everybody thought he could be. Quinn Warren, I think is kind of a guy, an underrated guy. He hasn't kicked off a bunch lately with McCormick back. I think he just had 2 in the last 2 games, so 4 total the last 2 weeks. but he really kind of steadied the ship until they could get McCormick back in that kickoff specialist role. And they've been great. I mean, they don't return kickoffs, which is to me, it's not a big deal. People kind of complained about it under Allen. It's funny, nobody complains about it this year. But under Allen, it was one of the big, I think it's when you're winning, people don't complain about that stuff. When you're losing, they do. But they've not returned hardly any kickoffs. They almost fair catch all of them. Obviously, punts they do, but it's interesting that's how they do it. But yeah, special teams has been great. Radishik, and I'm curious. I was kind of watching him in warmups, and it looked like his range was pushing high 40s. I didn't watch every single kick, but he's definitely got the leg strength, and it looks like he's getting stronger week by week. So again, I don't know if they're ever going to try a field goal that long, but it looks like if they had to, I think I feel pretty confident he can make it.
Yeah, and McCormick's been out for quite a while. He just came back the week previously. So I wonder if Indiana is still going to utilize him in that long range kicking role that they had planned for him before the season, or if they would just kind of give Radicic the reins there in all yardage situations on those kicks. But there's going to be a time and a place this year, maybe the Ohio State game, maybe the college football playoff if Indiana makes it, where Indiana's going to need a huge kick from Radicic. Hasn't missed a kick yet, so it's hard to bet against him if that's the case. But there's a lot to like. And one thing too, Matt, I did want to note is Radicic did attempt a kickoff, I believe, in this game towards the very end. I don't know if that was just Indiana trying to feel it out to see what he could do on a kickoff. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I did notice that, and I wasn't sure what that was about either because I was like, I didn't think they got two kickoff guys hurt. So to me, maybe they just wanted to give him a shot to kick off and see what he could do. Yeah, but I did notice it. I thought it was a little weird because I remember seeing. I was like, I think that was Rashes that just kicked the ball off there. So yeah, I guess it could be an experimentation type of thing.
Yeah, yeah. Because you have to figure he's going to be your kicker for the next several years here. So maybe just a little bit of an audition there. Okay, so before we jump into the Michigan game this upcoming Saturday, we are obviously recording this on Tuesday morning, so we haven't seen the college football playoff rankings reveal, which will be tonight. So if you guys are watching this on Wednesday or whatever, you guys already know, obviously, Indiana's ranking. Just quick thoughts from you, Matt. Indiana's ranked eighth in the AP poll this week, which I think is pretty fair considering last week. I know a lot of people were not too happy that Indiana stayed at 13. The rankings reveal, we don't know. Obviously, this is going to be the first time we've seen the committee do a rankings with this 12 team playoff format. Do you have a prediction of where Indiana might end up? Would there be a disappointment for you in terms of if Indiana's too low, too high, anything like that?
Now, my guess is, and like we said, we have no idea. I have no clue. And I'm kind of going off what a lot of people have been predicting. I think they'll probably be in that 8 to 10. Because I think isn't the 12th team usually the group of five
Yeah.
team? So I would guess 8, 10, 11, they'll be in there. Maybe I could see it maybe as high as 7. It's just hard to say. I do think their national ranking is probably a little bit should be a little bit lower. When I say lower, like 5, 6, 7. I think if you had put a different logo on their helmet, they would be. We've talked about this, but it is what it is. They I don't know what else they can do to be ranked higher. I mean, but again, it's just the way it is, and it's how they're viewed. You just got to keep winning. But yeah, I would say probably where they're ranked in the AP poll. I think they're eighth in AP and 10th in coaches. Probably right in the range of those two polls as far as their ranking. It would be, obviously, and a lot's going to depend on what happens this week and next week. These two games, if you can win, but if you can get in that 5 to 8 range, obviously you're hosting a game. Your fans get another game, and it's obviously it's a huge game. It's a playoff game. So it would be cool if you're in that range. But obviously, you got 3 more weeks. You got to keep taking care of business, and if they do, they'll be fine. If they beat Michigan and Ohio State, they're gonna get the ranking that they should probably get.
Yeah. What's your feel on a one-loss Indiana, assuming that one loss is to Ohio State? What's your feel on if they get in or not?
I think they've got a chance. I guess some of it's going to probably depend on they're kind of fighting with, because obviously Ohio State's jumped them if they beat them. You're fighting with Penn State. Penn State, assuming they win out and they've got a one-loss team, you're kind of because I mean, could 4 teams from the Big Ten make it? Sure. I think it's going to be hard though. I think
Yeah.
it's going to be hard to take 4 teams from the Big Ten because you're probably going to take I would guess you're probably going to get at least three from the SEC. Miami looks like it's fairly safe bet to make it. You get the power, so there's just you're running out of spots. And let's be honest, if it's Indiana and Penn State one loss, it's probably going to be Penn State. Fans aren't going to want to hear it, but it's probably what it's going to be. So, keep winning, and you don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But yeah, I think a one loss team could make it, but you're probably going to need a little bit of help.
Yeah. Yeah. Tonight's rankings are going to be really telling in terms of, how the committee is going to approach resumes, right? Because if you do a blind resume test, Indiana is a top five, six team in the nation. If you do a resume test with the logos attached to it, there's going to be some bias there. And listen, I'm not I'm not going to get into all these conspiracies and theories and whatnot. But I mean, I just would not be surprised if Indiana is left out as a one-loss team. I wouldn't be surprised at all, just because they're not a big name brand. They're not supposed to be here at all in the position that they're in. And I know fans aren't going to like to hear that, but that's just the way it is. At the end of the day, there's a lot of TV money to be made here, a lot of tickets to be sold, and obviously the committee is not supposed to take those things into account. But we've seen it before with the 2020 season where Indiana got screwed out of that Big Ten title game. I just wouldn't be totally shocked if something similar happens here if Indiana, goes into the final CFP reveal with one loss.
The one way I could see them being okay with one loss is if you beat Ohio State, you win, you're 12-0 in the regular season, you go to the Big Ten championship and you lose to Oregon. I think that one loss team gets in because you jumped Ohio State. But a one loss to Ohio State, I think, like I'm with you, I think it probably knocks them out. I think they're in trouble, assuming Penn State wins out and Oregon doesn't slip up at all. I think you're probably on the outside looking in. But if you beat Ohio State and lose in the Big Ten title game, I think they're safe. But I could be wrong on that too. But I think if they're the number two team in the Big Ten, how do you not put them in the playoff? They have to be.
Yeah. Yeah, tonight's gonna be really telling, and obviously, if you guys are listening to this on Wednesday, you guys will have already known where Indiana falls. But it's a big rankings because not only is it the first one, it's gonna kind of sort of set the bar for where Indiana needs to go and where Indiana, where the kind of leeway is there the rest of the season if they have any leeway to maybe drop a game here against Ohio State. All right, last thing, Matt, before we get into this Michigan game on Saturday, I put out a story yesterday, sort of updating Kurt Cignetti's bonuses that he's earned this year, and he is on track to make a huge chunk of change. He's already triggered a $250,000 bonus for Indiana winning six Big Ten games. He's already triggered a $250,000 bonus, basically part of his base pay annually. And probably the biggest part of all of this is a $500,000 increase in the coaching staff budget. Now, obviously, there's going to be a lot to play out this offseason. We'll see what kind of coaching movement there is on Indiana staff, if any. But that 500K is something that Cignetti pushed hard for in the offseason when he got hired. He wanted the administration to give him a lot of commitment that they were going to give him the resources necessary to build the staff that he wanted. But these bonuses, Matt, they're going to keep on stacking, and there's a lot more to come. If they get to the CFP that like Indiana's on track to do right now, even a first round CFP appearance for Cignetti is a $500,000 bonus. He is making a ton of money for himself this season, and that coaching staff budget too can only help.
Yeah, and I'm looking at your story and just I mean, if they would, let's just play it all the way out. If they would happen to go to if they would go to the national championship and I mean that's crazy to sound wins it, I think he would almost earn more in bonuses than he earns in base salary because his base salary is around 4 million, and with all the bonuses he's already earned plus the ones he would get, you're talking like another $4 million or close to it. It's usually when they do a contract for the coach, I'm not be perfectly honest, I don't really look at all the bonuses that much because some of them you fit. I mean, following Indiana, there's some of these like I never would have thought, okay, he's going to get 700,000 for or 600 for going to the second round of the playoff. It just you just don't really look at that, but it's and I why he has these bonuses. My guess is he probably I mean I know Rabby's kind of hinted at this on the board that there's stuff in the works behind the scenes. So obviously, I think a lot of this stuff is going to be now part of his salary going forward, especially if they redo it and kind of not tear up his deal, but kind of revamp it. I would think some of these bonuses that are in there are going to kind of just be part of his salary. because he's probably going to get a fairly significant raise. We would assume. But yeah, it's cool. I mean, you kind of wonder. I don't, how many coaches have almost hit every single bonus in their contract because he's going to come close. Even if they just go to the first round of the playoff or the quarterfinal, he's going to hit almost every bonus except for just a couple. It's but kudos to him. It's most coaches already have that money in their contract, but he's going to go out and earn it.
Yeah, yeah. Some of these are crazy. Just a couple here. You guys can go read the story from yesterday if you haven't seen it already. But he's basically got National Coach of the Year wrapped up. You'd have to think, and that comes with $100,000 bonus once that happens. A top six Big Ten finish is 250K. A second place Big Ten finish is 500K. A Big Ten title is $1 million. Uh, I I would assume when Indiana, Scott Dolson, the lawyers wrote up this contract and put all those bonuses in there, I would assume they didn't think a lot of these would happen, but they're about to have to pony up a lot of money in
Yeah.
incentives.
The finishes in the Big Ten, they don't get aggregated, right? So it's one or the
Yeah.
other, one
Yeah,
of
it's
the
just
three.
whatever the
So
highest
okay, so
finishes.
if he finishes fifth, he'll get 250, but if he finishes second, he won't get the 250 and the 500. He'll just get 500, right?
Yeah, I believe it's just the
Okay,
500. Yeah.
okay. Yeah, the way you worded it, that's what it sounded like. So I just want to make sure I was reading that right. Okay, but
Yeah.
still, it's obviously still good. I mean, if he wants to sprinkle a little my way, he's more than welcome.
Hey, that would be that would be phenomenal. I wouldn't be opposed to that either. But yeah, no, it's crazy. And for somebody like Kurt Cignetti, for the chance he took to come to Indiana, only making $4 million this year, which is in the bottom half of what Big Ten coaches are making. For him to get all these incentives and stuff is it's really good to see for him too, because for all the praise that Indiana's getting and just the national attention that Indiana's receiving right now. He deserves a lot of credit, and obviously monetarily he's going to get compensated very well here. And then obviously we'll see what happens in the offseason if Indiana restructures that contract at all. But for now, he's sitting pretty with the bonuses. All right, last thing here. Let's pivot over to the Michigan game, 3:30 p.m. on CBS. This is Indiana's first CBS game of the year. This is CBS's marquee slot on Saturdays. Indiana right now is 14-point favorites over the Wolverines, 86.9% chance to win according to ESPN's FPI. The Wolverines are 5-4. Obviously, a lot of people are very well aware of Michigan's offensive struggles this year. They can barely complete a forward pass. They've gone through like 3, 4 different quarterbacks this year. The guy they started the season with at quarterback, Davis Warren, got benched, and now he's back to the starting quarterback. Michigan can barely run the ball like they did last year. Aside from defensively, which right now it still remains to be seen if their top two cornerbacks are going to be available for this game. There's not a whole lot going right for Michigan, and to come into Memorial Stadium with the team as hot as Indiana, they are up for a tall, tall task if they're going to keep this one close.
Yeah, I don't know about the other. The Michigan guy Alejandro indicated that Will Johnson's not playing.
Yeah.
So that's and the other quarterback name escapes me. I didn't ask about him, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I was looking at Michigan's schedule. Their highest scoring game is 30 points, and Indiana's lowest scoring game is 31. FIU and then Washington. Obviously, FIU is the first game of the year. You're working out kinks from Washington with a backup quarterback. And I said this to Alejandro, if this is a game where Michigan wants any chance, it's got to be like 2017, 20 to or 24-20. This game can't get above that. They have no chance. They can't keep up with Indiana and shootout. I don't think they can win the game. Anyway, it was interesting that Sharon Moore, there were some comments this week where he talked about kind of like keeping everybody together. Those are the kind of comments you hear when you like feel like the locker room's starting to maybe splinter a little bit. And guys, and listen, you got NFL guys on your roster, quite honestly, from a team standpoint, don't really have a whole lot to play for. Mason Graham, Kenneth Grant, Colston Loveland, these guys, these are all first round picks. And they're not only they're not in the national championship race, they're probably staring at two more losses, Indiana and Ohio State. You're looking at a 6-6. They may not be going far from home for a bowl game. They may be there in Detroit. You just wonder, and I'm not trying to say that they don't care, but you just wonder how locked in they are on their team when they've got that their professional career staring them in the face. So I think feel like Indiana comes out, does what they've done a lot this year, jump out on them. I think Michigan's in trouble. I think they really have to control. They really have to control the ball, and even we've seen when that happens, Indiana doesn't have to win the time of possession. They've lost the time of possession in a lot of games, and they still are blowing people out. They've got to absolutely not allow Indiana to run it all, and then they got to get pressure on Rourke. Nobody's been able to do it. Nebraska was the best in the Big Ten when Indiana played them, and they couldn't touch them. I don't see them being able to do it. I think Indiana, and then defensively, I think Indiana will get after that quarterback and force him into some mistakes. Like I said, I think 14 points is too low. I think this is going to be, I'm not going to go over 40 because I don't want to jinx myself, but I'm going to say 38, 38-14.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Michigan's defense is going to hold up relatively well because it's probably the best front seven that Indiana has probably seen this year, just in terms of pure talent from the Wolverines. So I think they might have a little bit of trouble there in the run game. The pass protection this year for Indiana has been phenomenal. So I'm not too worried in that department. I think Michigan's defense is going to put up a fight. I just don't think that offense is going to be able to do anything against this Indiana defense. Um, so I'll go 31. I'll go 31-10. And it brings up a good question here, Matt, because I saw this floating around the other day. Indiana has not stormed the field yet this year. There's only two home games left, one of which is Purdue on Thanksgiving week, which students will not be in town for. Do you storm the field if you beat Michigan this week?
I mean, I could see it because even though this is not vintage Michigan, it's still Michigan, and I guess, like you said, this is maybe their last chance to do it this year. Although I might tell them, hey, you can storm the field after that first round playoff game. If you've got like Tennessee come to town or somebody like that or whoever it may be. But I guess I could see it. That's the one thing we haven't seen this year because obviously, the way the schedule's set up, these aren't really teams at home that you're going to storm the field on. Maybe Nebraska might have been the closest one, but even that felt probably a little bit like, that's not the right time to do it. So, yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. It'll be interesting, but, I know schools and everybody doesn't like fans on the field and all that. You know what? These students have shown up. They've been awesome. I'm not encouraging them to storm the field, but I would be okay with it if they do. I'm not trying to tell them to do it. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want to think Indiana get mad at me, but I would also not have a problem with it because these kids deserve to have a little bit of fun. They've seen some bad football the last few years, especially if you're a senior. I mean, you were there, Jared. I mean, I don't know how many good years you saw, but if you're a senior, you've seen 3 bad years of football, 9 wins in 3 years. So, and you've seen as many wins now than you saw your first 3 years as a student in Indiana. Let them have a little bit of fun. I mean, just be safe. Nobody get hurt. But if you want to come down and say hi, come down and say hi.
It would be a shame too if Indiana goes through this whole season and doesn't get a field storm because you're looking at a potential undefeated season and you don't get a chance to get on the field at least once. Uh, that is crazy, and it does speak to a little bit of the caliber of opponents that they played at home, which haven't been great. That the only thing I will say about that is if there is a field storm possibility, maybe the Purdue game if you can get enough students in the stadium there.
Yeah.
Because at that point, right, we'll see how things shake out. But at that point, you'll pretty much know if you're in the college football playoff or not. So say you beat Purdue, basically punch your ticket to the CFP. I could see something like that happening. But hey, for the sake of Indiana and its student section, I kind of want to see it. I think it would be kind of cool.
Well, and the other thing, I mean, listen, I don't see Oregon getting tripped up this year. They've got Maryland this week. Then but going to Wisconsin could be tough. I mean, I think they're better than Wisconsin, but that's a kind of trap game for them. Then they have 2 weeks off and they come home and play Washington the same week Indiana plays Purdue. Let's just say they lose to Wisconsin, Indiana. Indiana beats Ohio State, and if you beat Purdue, you're the Big Ten, at least regular season champion. Or you finish number 1, however they want. I don't know how they classify it. Then come on down, take the goalpost down. Let's take them over to Showalter Fountain and party it up. So I don't know. I mean, but yeah, to me, that if you don't do it this week, then the Purdue game, especially if you're playing for, at worst you could be playing for a tie for first in the Big Ten, which is just, I mean, listen, I said a million times, I've been following this program for a really long time. It's crazy to even think that. And, it's crazy that they're that close to this happening. But you know what? It's reality, and it's been a lot of fun.
No. Will you be partaking in the goalpost moving to Showalter?
No, I'm a little bit too old for that. I might pull a hammy or something. So um, I'll try to video it though as much as I can.
Yeah, yeah, and that horde
I
of
expect I expect guys fans out there. I expect Jared to be on the top of the goalpost, rip his shirt off, and to show his biceps.
stop.
That's what we all want to see.
Oh man. All right, well, if that ends up happening, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Things can get crazy. But for now, Indiana, eighth ranked in the nation. Tonight is going to be a big night. Tuesday night, the CFP rankings reveal comes out, and then on Saturday, the Hoosiers host Michigan at 3:30 on CBS, and they get a bye week, and then it's Ohio State week, which is setting up to be maybe the biggest game all season, like literally in the nation.
Yeah.
You had that Texas, what was it, Texas, Georgia? But aside from that, Indiana, Ohio State literally might be the biggest game in college football this season. Am I crazy?
No, I don't think so at all. I don't. If it's not the biggest, it's at least right there in the top two or three.
Yeah.
Especially at the time of the year. I think that's what makes it bigger because you're talking what basically the second to last game of the season for both teams. And there should be a ton on the line. I mean, that's what we're expecting, and we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I don't think that's crazy at all.
Yeah. I kind of hope too. Obviously, they haven't put out the game time for it. I kind of hope it's a well. Actually, it wouldn't be a night kick because they never give Big Ten teams night kicks anymore for those national games.
Yeah,
So
my guess is it's either I could see it being on Fox at noon, being that kind of. Although I think they've been to Ohio State this year. I don't know if they go back again. But then I also could see, you can see another like 3:30 CBS game like we have this week. Because that's it could be one of their. But that's my guess. I think it'll be noon or 3:30, and it'll be one of the main games of the weekend.
yeah, and that's where I don't mean to get on too much of a tangent, but that's where the new ESPN contract kind of sucks because these Big Ten teams are basically blacklisted from playing that primetime game on ABC, and a
Yeah,
game like that deserves to be on primetime. So
yeah. That was it. Was it like the 8 o'clock game or something that they have on ABC that used to be Big Ten games? Yeah, you're right. It does kind of stink.
yeah. So obviously that's looking far ahead, and we keep saying this. There's a lot of crazy things happening this year, but it's crazy that we can look that far ahead. And a Michigan game at Memorial Stadium is pretty much everybody's just chalking that up as a win. So it's crazy times, crazy times, crazy times in Bloomington. But the Hoosiers are 9-0. They'll look to go to 10-0 this weekend against Michigan, and then we'll see ultimately what happens tonight on the CFP reveal. But before we sign off, this was just posted on our site an hour ago by Tom Lloyd. Julian Lewis is looking to make the visit. Reportedly, he was supposed to be here for the Nebraska game, didn't end up making the visit there. He's supposed to make the visit for this Michigan game. Matt, just importance of this. Do you think it happens? I know you've kind of been in wait and see mode until he's actually on campus.
That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, I've heard the same thing. I heard it. I think I posted it inside the locker room that you know, there was talk that he was scheduled. Um, you know, I'm to the point where if he's on campus, then I'll believe it. And I've even had somebody kind of inside the program kind of say the same thing. Hey, he's supposed to come, but I'll believe it when he's actually standing here on the field, or he's here in the facility or whatever. So hopefully he does. If they get him on campus, I think they got a great shot. There's going to be another awesome atmosphere for this game, sold out, Michigan. I'm sure it's going to be people are going to be going nuts. So obviously, we're not going to have the pregame shows, but it's still going to be a great atmosphere. And it should be, and Indiana should put on a good show for him. So we'll see. I've always said if they get him on campus again for a third time this season for a game day, especially the way they're playing, they've got a legit shot to get him. We'll see if they can. I mean, look at right now, USC's a mess. They just changed quarterbacks. Miller Moss just got benched. So I don't know. Colorado, I guess, is still in there, but it's they've got a shot. I think the biggest thing is can he say I'm going to Indiana as a 5-star player? People may not want to hear this. It takes courage for a kid to do that because it just doesn't happen. But maybe this weekend will be enough for him to say, you know what, this is where I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see ultimately what happens there, but that is obviously a huge development for Indiana if the visit ends up coming to fruition. But for now, this is the official sign off. Indiana hosts Michigan 3:30 p.m. on CBS at Memorial Stadium. Peegs.com will have full coverage there. As always, Matt, thanks for joining me this week, and we'll see you folks over on the site throughout the week.